Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm going to admit that right now I'm a little sad. I just finished watching the sixth James Bond film on Her Majesty's Secret Service, starring George Lazenby as the new 007 after Sean Connery's initial departure from the role. And man, it always hits me. That's a really good James Bond film. And it's just a good movie, just overall. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. If you don't know about that film, allow me to explain a little bit about it. It's set apart in the series for a lot of reasons, namely for Lazenby's only first and only performance. Two is because it's the one where Bond actually gets married, which, if you're a Bond fan, that's a what? He gets married? Hold on a second. You have to see what that's about. So if you're curious at all, gotta watch that. I was when I first saw it. Of course, I've seen the film, many times over the years now, but it never fails to stir my emotions. Bond is tasked to investigate Blofeld, but we know it's Blofeld, but he's masquerading as Count de Blochamp, who is he's claiming to be Count de Blochamp, and he has a front organization where he is sort of curing ailments and allergens and different things like that for humanitarian purposes. Is what he on paper is what he's doing. He's masquerading as a guy who's helping the world. Bond knows this is false, obviously, so he's eventually sent up to Piz Gloria in Switzerland in the Alps to investigate, who he himself is also masquerading as Sir Hilary Bray, a genealogist from the Royal College of Arms, I think, to prove Blofeld's lineage, that he is, in fact, Count de Blochamp. Obviously, they're both fronting, and it's weird in the sense that they both know who each other are, having previously met each other in You've Only Lived Twice, in the films anyway. The books address this much better, but the films, obviously, for some reason they made the films out of order, and so it's weird when they meet each other. Anyway, that aside, that's what Bond's there to do. He's investigating some different things. He uncovers some insidious things that Blofeld is actually up to, and that's sort of the mission piece. On the other plot line in this story is, of course, Bond falls in love with Tracy, who is the leading lady in this film, played by Diana Rigg, who Game of Thrones fans will know. But if you are fans of some of her older work, she was Mrs. Peel, Emma Peel, in the early 1960s television show The Avengers, which is a great show. If you haven't seen that show, by the way, I think you should watch it. So there was an Avengers before the Avengers. Before Marvel's Avengers, there was an Avengers. So the British Avengers, check that out. You may know it. If you fans of Bond might know the Avengers movie that came out in the late 1990s with Ralph Fiennes, who interestingly enough is in the Bond films now, and Uma Thurman as Emma Peel and Sean Connery, who plays the villain in that film. But the Avengers in the late 1990s, that's an interesting film. Check that out too if you have not seen that. But Diana Rigg plays Mrs. Peel in the Avengers. Here in this film, she's Tracy, who Bond falls in love with and eventually marries. And the film is essentially, there are lengthy pieces that sort of depict their courtship. And initially, obviously, Bond is not, he's not trying to get married. But something about Tracy gets him, and he eventually gets to that point. As a Bond film, first, because this is what this is, it's got all the ingredients. A Bond film, you got all the girls, particularly in this film, you've got beautiful women from different countries, and you've got sort of beautiful locations, the Alps where they are, lovely mountains and snow, and it looks very pretty. I think it counts as a Christmas film. I think this film came out in Christmas time around in '69, and this, with the snow and everything, feels very much holiday time. Look at it, it's Christmas time. It's December right now. This is it's one of the films I also watch around the holidays time because it feels very much Christmassy to me. I don't know. That's the but anyway, it looks beautiful. The music, John Barry kills it again. If you read anything about Barry and how he talks about scoring the pictures for different Bonds, different actors who come into the role, he uses different sounds to define that actor's sort of space in the role, and musically, Majesty stands out for that reason too. The moment you see George Lazenby on screen, from the beginning of the film, the Bond theme sounds, it's the Bond theme, but you hear the difference. He's using different synthesized different things to dictate. This is not your Sean Connery's Bond. This is not Sean Connery. This is a new player in the mix who is inhabiting this role, and musically it reflects that as well, which is really cool. For only 6 films into the series, it has a way, it references itself, it references the previous films that came before it. It acknowledges those films through different sort of artifacty things that like Easter egg things that show us that this is the same guy who had those 5 previous adventures. It's interesting. It plays like a sort of an anniversary film. Dine of the Day is a good example of how it references the films that came before it through some of the more key things that define a certain film. For instance, in Dine of the Day, the jetpack from Thunderball makes an appearance. The shoe with the spike tip from Russia with Love also makes an appearance. Majesty does a similar thing, which is interesting. It shows like the knife, the belt that Honey Ryder had in the first film, Dr. No. It shows the watch with the strangling rope thing that you can choke people with from Russia with Love, and the breathalyzer thing from Thunderball. Things like that make appearances in this film, which watching it now, I can see, I don't know, something about it feels like you're celebrating the stuff that came before it, but while acknowledging that this is a new situation. I don't know, it's interesting that for the 6th film, how it honors the previous films in that way. The action sequences are great in this film, particularly the skiing sequences. This film is the first skiing situation in the Bond series, and it's captured with such skill and such just focus and precision, and it's just very well executed. You imagine, like, how do they get certain shots of, like, and this is big scope, expansive film. They're shooting these things, those skis are going really fast, and they're really getting some prime shots that really, because that's when I think of this movie, I think of that. Like, the first thing I think of is the skiing. That's the, and of course the theme that plays with the skiing. That's like I think that's the centerpiece of the film. That's that skiing sequence. And when Bond escapes the facility, and they're after him, and Blofeld goes with him too. Like, that's serious. Like, they're trying to catch that guy. They're really trying to make sure he does not escape with the knowledge that he has now. That's usually Blofeld just sends henchmen, but this film is serious because Blofeld directly gets involved in the situation. He's not going to let just the guys handle it by themselves. He's going to be part of that situation. So in many ways, this film is that much more gangster. You look at 5 films setting up this rivalry between Bond and Spectre and Blofeld, who is the sort of face of the organization. And finally, there's active involvement on Blofeld's part. He's not just dictating stuff. This is the first film up to that point where he's so active in the mix, and it's a great sequence. It's just that it's a great sequence. They're really trying to catch this guy, and it's just shot really well, and it's gangster. The other thing that sets this film apart from the previous films is that Bond, there's no gadgets in this film. This is a much more pared down affair in terms of the Bond's ability to escape situations. He's using his wits to get out of things. It's very bare bones. It's also bare bones in the sense that it explores more of his character. It's the more, up to that point, the most human Bond that we get. It's a departure from Connery, who at that point is the alpha male, masculine dude who doesn't really. There's not a lot of examples of him showing sort of warmth or genuine sort of care for, or just sort of a turmoil, inner stuff going on. There's not a lot of examples of that throughout Connery's first 5 films, but this film, Lazenby is really the first half of the film is a lot like that. It's like the Connery light, and then there are instances where from the middle of the film towards the end, you get to see him being a little bit more human and a little bit more warm, particularly when it comes to Tracy, like a real man who experiences fear and experiences sort of genuine warmth and care for another person, and that's another thing that sets this film apart from other films in the Bond cinematic canon, anyway, and it's just it's well executed. I want to take a minute and talk about George Lazenby for a minute and his performance. In the conversation of Bonds and who's the best actor to play the role and everything, I think I'll start by saying it's a real shame. It's such a shame that he didn't get to do more. He just walked away from the role, and it's just like, man, I think he did a really good job. He was a really good Bond. I mean, I learned, and looking at sort of the history of how certain Bond films were received, I was surprised to see that On Her Majesty's Secret Service was not popular at the box office when it came out. I wasn't. I was surprised because, and this is me watching it, obviously, 40 some odd years after the film was made. When I was 16 when I first saw the film, 15, and I was like, what the heck? This film is like I thought it was an amazing film. I said, this is ridiculous. This is great. And, years later, finding out that the film didn't do well. And likely, a lot of that was due to just how popular Sean Connery was. Also, Sean Connery's Bond was different. And, in that, again, there was no sensitivity. There was less sensitivity. And I don't think audiences were ready at that time to see a sensitive Bond, which is why it didn't do well at the box office. And likely, that's probably what prompted producers to really push to get Sean Connery back after On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Connery was done with the role, and they offered him everything to try to get him back. And eventually, they worked out a deal, and Connery was able to come back. But I don't think Diamonds didn't. While it probably did better than Majesty, if I'm comparing those two films, I think Majesty is a stronger film. It just has much more. It's stronger thematically. It's got great drama, and the stakes feel a little bit more real. Bond at one point in the film is at his lowest moment. He's escaped the facility, but everyone's after him, and he's got no way out. You can't call for help. He's in the middle of a crowd, but he's by himself. He's all alone. And there's a moment in that film where it's pretty much it's hopeless. Hope is they're going to find him. And then out of nowhere, Tracy arrives, and how the film depicts her arrival, it didn't always do this to me, but when I watched it today, it made me I'm not shy to admit this. I cried to see Tracy arrive, and the camera shows her feet and goes to her legs, it pans up, and it's like, oh shoot, and it's like, oh, this angel came out of nowhere to save James Bond, who is about to be killed by a whole bunch of dudes, people who are after him. I would marry her right there. Yeah, let's get married right now. That's serious. You haven't seen. Understand how serious this is. Up to that point in the Bond films, Bond's been in some tight spots, and he has been saved in different ways and stuff like that. But there's no point in the 5 Connery films where he was in that particular position at that low a point, that by himself, with no hope of surviving. And then this angel falls from the sky, and then he's got a way out. It's such a beautifully shot, and it depicts the sort of worry and fear and uncertainty. It's the first time in the film he does not know what to do. He doesn't have a way out. So seeing Tracy, how they did it, they knew what they were doing when they shot that scene. She came out of the situation, and it was, oh man, she was looking right, and she knew he was in trouble. That's the thing. She saw him, and she knew he was in trouble. There were no, she didn't go, what's wrong, like that. She saw the man, and his face looked up, and Lazenby played it so well. He played it like he was so relieved. He looks up and he sees her, and he's like, it's almost like he can't believe that it's her, that he's not alone. And then another bonus, you got a way out. It's it's a small moment, but it really, it's a great one. And there aren't that many in the series like that. Particularly at that point, it's very important to note. Again, because Connery films didn't have that. Lazenby comes in, and that's the other thing too. It's a little bit more dynamic in that way in terms of the acting, the caliber. Not that like I love Sean Connery. Connery is still like he's probably still the best, like the top of the levels. I'm going to talk about that later with like Bonds like that with different ones. Danny Craig. I love Danny Craig too. I think he's the close second to. There's a whole conversation about that. No disrespect to Sean Connery. That's the films are a result of a lot of people doing different things with how they construct what the cinematic version of Bond is going to be. And those 5 films are solid. You get to Majesty though, number 6, it's something else. It is also solid in its own way. I think Lazenby for his first film was killer as James Bond. Imagine coming into the role, your first film role as James Bond, and it's already been established as something that's like a series. It's very lucrative, and there's a certain formula that it has to adhere to. That's super daunting. It would feel like. Lazenby came in, and whatever the alchemy was that made the film be what it is, I think he did a great job. And especially some of the more dramatic moments, it's definitely it's more dramatic up to that point. You have conflict with Bond and M, which you never see like that. There's some real sort of tension between the two of them. And then that heightens this sort of drama, and everything is just, it's much more, it means a little bit more. Just a little bit more. It's still Bond, it's got all the fast cars and the beautiful women, but it's a little less pop than the previous 5 films. It still has it, but it's much more, again, it's much more grounded, it's pared down. And I think it actually makes the film better. And it stands out too as one of the early precursor really to some of the Daniel Craig stuff and Pierce Brosnan stuff. It's really the first version of that sort of more sensitive, more softer type of Bond that you would see later. At that point, people weren't ready for it. They can handle it more now, but It's a shame that people couldn't handle that. And the villain is great. Telly Savalas is great as Blofeld. He should have been back too. I think that was the prime at that time. He's probably the best Blofeld. Donald Pleasance was good. I mean, he was very good. But his Blofeld seems a lot more sort of stationary than Telly Savalas. Telly Savalas it shows that he's super intelligent, but he's also super active and not afraid to get loose. Like, he can get in the mix. And that's one of the ones where you see Bond and Blofeld actually fight. Like, they're actually fighting. I don't think there's never, you don't have a film ever, I don't think, in the series where that happens. That's the only film in all the films right now, to date, where there's actual physical contact, physical struggle between the two of them. You don't have that. That's serious. And as an aside, the book on Her Majesty's Secret Service is an amazing book. It's probably, I think, out of the books that I've read, out of Fleming's books, Majesty's probably the best book. It's the best James Bond book. So if you're curious about that, definitely read the book, because the book is amazing. Like, the book is amazing. I will say this, and I think the film does this sequence justice. There's a second ski sequence in the film where Bond and Tracy are skiing together. And Blofeld triggers an avalanche. It's a massive sequence. And I found myself wondering, how the heck did they do that? Probably miniatures, probably whatever they did. It looks like a legit avalanche. And it's super scary. Number one. Number two, I would say this about the book. That sequence in the book is super scary. It's super, I remember, I'm getting chills just thinking about it right now. And I thought about it when I was watching the movie today. I read that book, and that scene it's the most harrowing, it's the most intense experience. Fleming described that situation with the detail that puts you in, not only in the moment, but you're in Bond's skin. You feel the sort of dread and the fear of escaping this massive avalanche. And you don't know if he's going to make it. You don't know if they're going to get out. I'm not doing it justice by explaining it to you, but I bring that up because the film, it gets as close to that as possible. And I think my barometer for what, more critically, is the stronger Bond situation in the films is when the films get as close spiritually to the books and the literary version of Bond as possible, because that's the source material, right? And even if the films are their own thing, the spirit of the books is woven into all the films, even the post-Fleming stuff. So they've used up all of Fleming's original stuff. Everything still is rooted in the literary, what Ian Fleming established in the books. So another reason why this film is so crucial is because it's closest to the spirit of the book in every way, from the action sequence that I explained to the Bond's sort of psyche and his internal situation, like all the richness of the character and just the everything with Blofeld and all that stuff. Obviously, there's stuff at that point. There's stuff that you have to sort of spice up because of the film. It's the film version, and you have to sort of live up to what was established previously with Goldfinger, which at that point in the 1960s and '64 was the biggest Bond film, and then Thunderball, which was equally big, and then You Only Live Twice. You have to, when you get to Majesty, you still have to do some things that line up with that say it's part of the same series, and I think they do that without making it bigger than those previous films. It's its own thing, and it's big in its own way, but it's also very intimate. It's very personal, and in a lot of ways. Anyway, I think I've talked on too long about this particular film. If you haven't seen the film, definitely check it out. It's a great James Bond film. Don't let anybody tell you that it's whack or that Lazenby is whack. I'm telling you right now, and again, this is my opinion, so I think definitely see it for yourself to have an opinion on your own about what you think about On Her Majesty's Secret Service. So, that is the end of this particular video. Whew, wow. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. There were a lot of things competing with your time and space, and so if you have made it this far in the video and you've completed it, thank you for your time. From my family to yours, happy holidays.